not mess around with you again. So for this video, we'll be focusing on the concept of finding the inverse of a matrix. Now for the inverse of the matrix, we'll be focusing on a 2 by 2 matrix. As the process to find the inverse of other matrices are different, we are just focusing on the basics for high school level. Now, when you get a matrix and you're told to find the inverse, there are 3 steps or 3 things you'll need to do. Step 1 will be to find the determinant of the matrix. Step 2, find the adjoint. And step 3 is to multiply the inverse of the determinant by the adjoint. So let's work through. Step 1, finding the determinant. Now to find the determinant of a matrix, first thing write D or you write det, which is the abbreviation. Now the determinant of a matrix is to multiply the leading diagonal. And the leading diagonal is the one going this direction. So it's, in this case, it will be 3 and 6. So you'll multiply those two first, put a subtraction sign, and then the other 2 numbers that are not the leading, you'll multiply those 2. So it will be 4 times 5. Put that there. Now you'll work out each bracket. So 3 times 6, that will give you 18, minus 4 times 5, 20. Now, because the 20 is here, persons may want to try to switch them around. But for matrix, do not switch them around. You can get a negative determinant. You must always keep it in the position of these 2, the leading diagonal being written first, subtract the other 2 elements of the matrix being multiplied. So 18 minus 20, that will be negative 2. And that is your determinant. Second step, adjoint. So ADJ, that's the abbreviation for adjoint. Now, to find the adjoint is very simple. It simply means that the leading diagonal, switch the numbers around, or the numbers position. So 3 came first, 6 came last. You'll switch them around to make 6 come first and 3 come last. For the other 2, which is the 4 and the 5, all you need to do, write those back. And if they were positive, you make them become negative by writing a minus sign before it. And if it was negative, you will make it become positive by not writing a sign. So in this case, both of them were positive, so you put a minus sign before, and it becomes negative. And that is your adjoint. So switch, change the sign. And then final step, which is to multiply the inverse of the determinant by the adjoint. Now to find that, all you need to do is, if the determinant was a fraction perhaps, you'll just flip it over. If it's a whole number, all you need to do is write 1 over whatever the determinant was. So it's negative 2 here, so you write 1 over negative 2 multiplied by what the adjoint is. So it's 6, negative 4, negative 5, and 3. Now, because this is a fraction, and these are whole numbers, all you need to do is multiply the whole number by the numerator of the fraction. So it's going to be 6 times 1, 4, negative 4 times 1, negative 5 times 1, and 3 times 1. So it's always the whole number by the numerator of your fraction. So 6 times 1 is 6, 4 times 1 is 4, 5 here, 3. And you keep your denominator. So if it can be simplified, you'll simplify it. So in this case, you look at 6, look at the negative 2. What's the biggest number that can go into both? That will be 2. So 2 into 6 is 3 times. 2 into negative 2 is 1 time. So because it has a denominator of 1, you do not need to write it back like a fraction. You can write it as a whole number. So 6, as we said before, 6 divided by 2 is 3. So you put the 3. Because this is negative, this is positive, the rules of integers apply. So you'll put back the negative sign here. Here, negative 4, negative 2. Both of them is negative, so you know that at the end of simplifying, you will lose the sign, because dividing by a negative number makes it, dividing a negative by a negative makes it positive. So negative 4 divided by negative 2, that will give you positive 2. And here, negative 5 divided by negative 2, if you should try to simplify this, you're going to get a decimal. You don't need a decimal, you can keep it as a fraction. Now, because both of them is negative, you can rewrite it in the simplified form by removing your negative sign. Here, 3 over negative 2, same thing. If you try to simplify it further, you would more than likely get a decimal, which would be 1.5. You don't need a decimal, so you can keep it as a fraction and write it back. So 3 over negative 2. The reason you keep this as negative 2, whereas you dropped it here, was because this is positive 3. So once you only have one term in a fraction that's negative, your final answer will be negative. But if you have two terms of the same fraction as negative, your final answer will be positive. And that's it. So once you're finding the inverse of a matrix, there are 3 steps to follow. Remember them. 1, find a determinant, which is to multiply the diagonals and subtract them. So the leading, subtract the other diagonal. Then you find the adjoint next, which is step 2. Switch the elements of the leading around and make the other elements negative of what they were. And then step 3, find the inverse of the determinant by putting 1 over it if it's a whole number, or if it's a fraction, you flip it. And then you multiply that by the adjoint. Usually you get a whole number for your determinant. So you'll generally just put 1 over the determinant multiplied by whatever the adjoint was, and you'll work it out by multiplying the numerator by the whole numbers. And then for this part, if it can be simplified, simplify it. And that's it. So I hope this video would have helped you to understand how to multiply or how to find the inverse of matrices. And tune in again with Mr. Brown while I explain other mathematical concepts.